The galaxy mocked humanity's warning. Then human war fleets started the Great Hunt. The chamber was already laughing when I walked in. I had not even opened my mouth. I had not placed my data drives on the podium or adjusted the translator bead in my ear. I had simply walked through the main doors of the galactic conclave, a human, alone, in a hall built to seat the representatives of 47 civilizations. And somewhere in the upper gallery, something with 6 arms and a violet crest was already making a sound that every translator in the room rendered as amusement. My name is Elias Morn. At the time, I held the rank of commander in the United Nations Space Division, though my role that day was not military. I was a delegate. I had been chosen because I spoke 4 alien dialects without a machine, because I had spent 11 years in deep space survey work, and because I was, according to the council that appointed me, unlikely to lose my composure under pressure. They were right about that. What they did not tell me was that keeping your composure while an entire galaxy laughs at you is a specific kind of difficulty that no training can fully prepare you for. I set my drives on the podium. I looked out at the chamber. The conclave hall on orbital station Vareth Prime was the largest enclosed space I had ever stood in. The ceiling was so high that the upper galleries disappeared into a pale artificial haze. The seating tiers curved around the central floor in wide arcs, species grouped by delegation, their varied shapes and sizes creating a pattern that, from the podium, looked almost beautiful. The Keth Dominion sat directly ahead of me, tall, gray-skinned, with eyes the color of old ice. The Vorani Collective filled an entire arc to my left, their translucent membrane bodies pulsing faintly with bioluminescent light. The Teshari occupied the highest tier, ancient and still, their long fingers folded in a gesture that I had learned meant patience, though on that day it looked more like boredom. I had prepared for 6 months. I had not slept properly in 3 weeks. I began. "Honored delegates," I said, and the room shifted, not quieter exactly, but attentive in the way a crowd goes attentive when they expect entertainment. Humanity has detected an anomaly at the outer edge of the galactic rim. We have designated it the shear. It is not a natural phenomenon. It is not a navigational hazard. It is active. It is expansive. And based on our analysis of 7 destroyed probe units and 14 years of void sensor data, it is consuming matter at a rate that, if continued, will reach the inner systems within 40 years. I pulled up the first display. The holographic projection rose above the podium, a map of the outer rim, marked with red zones where our probes had gone silent. The silence was not the kind caused by malfunction. The silence was the kind caused by there being nothing left to transmit. The Keth ambassador, whose name translated roughly as Elder Voice of the Second Dominion, leaned forward in his seat. He looked at the red zones. He looked at me. Then he said something that his translator rendered as, "Your instruments are young." Laughter not from everyone, but enough. I held my position. Our instruments recorded the complete erasure of 3 planetary bodies in the Kessler void sector. We have the footage. I would like to show it. "Please do," said the Vorani representative, and there was something in her modulated voice that told me she had already decided what she was going to think of it. I showed it. 47 seconds of footage from Probe Unit Delta 9, capturing a moon the size of Earth's own solid rock, measurable mass, gravitational signature, and then nothing. Not explosion. Not fragmentation. The moon was simply removed from existence in the space of 12 seconds, like a word erased from a page. The chamber was quiet for exactly 4 seconds after the footage ended. Then the Teshari elder on the upper tier spoke, and his voice was slow and measured, and carried the particular weight of someone who has been alive for 3,000 years and has seen many young species make many frightened presentations. "Commander Morn," he said, "humanity has been a spacefaring civilization for 112 years. We have been navigating the void for 5 millennia. What you are showing us is sensor distortion. We have cataloged 49 similar events over the course of our history. They are not threats. They are the galaxy breathing." More sounds of agreement from the upper tiers. The Keth ambassador made an open palm gesture that translated as settled matter. I did not raise my voice. I had decided before I walked in that I would not raise my voice, no matter what happened. With respect, I said, none of your 49 cataloged events show a rate of expansion. The shear is moving. It has moved 11 light years toward the inner rim in 14 years. That trajectory, if maintained, places the Vorani outer colonies in its path within 18 years. I am asking for a joint survey mission. I am asking for 12 vessels, 6 months, and an open data agreement. The Vorani representative tilted her membrane body in a way that expressed something between sympathy and dismissal. Commander, we appreciate humanity's enthusiasm for galactic safety. It speaks well of your species' intentions. But 12 vessels and 6 months of conclave resources cannot be committed to investigating sensor distortions from probes that have been operational for fewer than 20 years. I looked at her. I looked at the Keth ambassador, who was now speaking quietly to his aide and had clearly stopped listening. I looked at the Teshari elder, who had folded his fingers back into the patient's gesture and was looking at the ceiling. I picked up my data drives. Then I have one final request, I said. I would like the record to show that humanity presented this evidence on this date, that we requested a joint investigation, and that the request was denied. The conclave secretary confirmed it. The record would show it. I walked out of the chamber. Behind me, as the doors were still closing, I heard the laughter start again, cleaner this time, more relaxed, the laughter of people who had just resolved something comfortably. I stood in the corridor outside, and I opened my secure comm channel. My hand was completely steady. This is Commander Morn to Earth Command, I said. The conclave has declined. Begin Protocol Ember. Full authorization, immediate effect. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice I trusted completely, Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitfield, my direct contact at Earth Command, said, "Understood, Commander. Protocol Ember is active." I closed the channel. I stood in the corridor for a moment longer, listening to the muffled sounds of the conclave returning to its regular business. 47 civilizations, most of them older than human writing, all of them certain they knew the shape of the universe. I had memorized every face in that chamber when they laughed. I would need that memory later. I walked to the docking bay. I had a long flight home and a great deal of work to do. The first thing Kara Whitfield said to me when I landed at the Earth Command facility in Nevada was not a greeting. She handed me a sealed briefing folder and said, "The Martian yards are already running 3 shifts. We started moving materials the day the conclave dismissed your preliminary report, 4 months ago." I took the folder. "How far along are we?" "Far enough that you need to see it yourself." We flew to Mars the next morning. Nothing in my 11 years of deep space survey work had prepared me for what I saw when the shuttle banked over the northern industrial corridor, and the shipyards came into view below us. I had known, intellectually, that Protocol Ember involved large-scale construction. I had written parts of the framework myself, years earlier, as a theoretical contingency. But there is a difference between writing a plan and seeing it breathe. The yard stretched for 200 kilometers along the Martian surface, enclosed in pressurized domes that glowed amber in the early morning light. Cranes moved in slow arcs over the skeletal frames of vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. I counted 16 hull frames in various stages of completion before the shuttle angle changed, and I lost the view. 16. And those were only the ones visible from our approach vector. "How many total?" I asked Kara. 41 hulls active, she said. 14 already complete and running sea trials in the outer belt. We are calling the class the Morn class, by the way. The design committee voted on it. I looked at her. I wish they hadn't done that. I know, I voted against it too. I was outvoted 11-3. She did not look particularly sorry. "The lead ship is the Unt's Reckoning. She is finished. She is waiting for you." The shuttle landed inside Dome 7, the largest of the construction enclosures, and I stepped out onto a gantry that overlooked the Reckoning's upper hull. Even from above, she was enormous, a deep space carrier class, built not for transport or exploration, but for sustained offensive operations across interstellar distances. Her lines were long and angular, without the aesthetic softening that civilian vessels carried. She looked like something that had been designed by people who were no longer interested in being polite about what they were building. Which was accurate. I walked her from bow to stern that afternoon, with Kara at my side and chief engineer, Nolan Price 3 steps behind us, explaining systems in the rapid, compressed way that engineers explain things when they are proud of their work and impatient to show all of it at once. Nolan was 43, red-haired, quiet in social situations, but completely transformed in the presence of machinery. He had designed 3 of the Reckoning's core systems personally, and had not taken a full day off in 18 months. The primary weapon arrays, he said, as we passed through the forward gunnery corridor, are calibrated to the shear's energy signature based on your probe data. We ran 40,000 simulations. Conventional kinetic and energy weapons pass through the shear's outer field without transferring force. The field absorbs and redistributes. So we built something different. We are calling them resonance disruptors. They work by matching the shear's own frequency and then inverting it. In simple terms, we are using the shear's language to tell it to come apart. You tested this, I said. On a scaled model of the field, yes, it works. We are confident it will scale. Confident, I repeated. Very confident, Nolan said, and he said it the way an engineer says it when he means certain but does not want to jinx anything. I stopped at one of the observation windows that looked out over the main hangar bay. It was filled with smaller craft, interceptors, long-range scouts, tactical support vessels, all in the same angular design language as the Reckoning. The hangar crew moved between them with practiced efficiency, running pre-flight checks and equipment installations. They were young, most of them, younger than I expected. How many of these people know what we are actually preparing for? I asked. Kara was quiet for a moment. All of them, she said. We stopped keeping it vague about 8 months ago. People work harder when they know the truth. She was right. I had seen that in my survey years. The crews who knew the real mission parameters always outperformed the ones given sanitized briefings. People do not need protection from difficult truths. They need honesty and a clear purpose. What about the other nations? I said. Every signatory to the Ember Agreement is contributing. The European yards are building 12 hulls. The Pacific Coalition is running support vessel construction. We have 17 countries actively participating. The official cover story, the Reconstruction Infrastructure Program, is holding. The Conclave's intelligence networks are good, but they are not looking for this. They do not think we are capable of it. They do not think we are capable of much, I said. No, Kara said, they do not. I turned away from the window and looked back down the corridor at the Reckoning's spine, the long central structure that connected every system, every weapon, every life support unit into a single functioning whole. It had taken 4 years to design and 2 more to build. It represented a significant portion of Earth's total economic output over a decade, redirected quietly through 100 different budget categories and infrastructure funds. Outside our solar system, the Conclave held its sessions and signed its trade agreements and discussed the finer points of galactic diplomacy. The Keth ambassador probably told the story of the frightened human delegate to his colleagues at dinner. Inside Dome 7, Nolan Price was explaining to me how the Reckoning's resonance disruptors would work at full scale. I took notes on everything. I always take notes. 3 weeks after my visit to Mars, the first report came in from the Vorani outer colonies. A survey station on the edge of the Kessler Void sector had gone silent. Vorani Command marked it as a technical fault and dispatched a repair crew. The repair crew did not report back. Nobody connected it to anything yet, but I knew what it was. I had been watching for it for 4 years. I sent a message to Kara. The shear is moving. I think we have less time than we projected. Push the completion schedule. She replied in 11 minutes. Already pushed it. Nolan hasn't slept in 2 days. The reckoning will be ready. I kept a record of everything, every dismissal, every condescending vote, every diplomatic non-answer from the conclave. I called it the ledger. It was not a document of hatred. It was a document of accuracy. I wanted a precise, factual account of what had been said, by whom and when, not for revenge, for honesty. The galaxy had been given a choice. It had made one. Now we were making ours. The alert reached the Reckoning's bridge at 3:47 ship time, and I was already awake. I had not slept well in a week. The void sensor array that Nolan's team had installed on our long-range mast was producing readings that I did not like, a specific frequency pattern at the edge of the Kessler sector that matched, almost exactly, the signature from probe unit Delta 9's last transmission before it went silent 6 years ago. I had been checking the readouts every few hours, telling myself I was being careful, knowing I was being afraid, and accepting both. Lieutenant Commander Grace Alderton was at the sensor station when I walked onto the bridge. She was 29 years old, had finished top of her class at the Earth Command Academy, and had been awake for as long as I had based on the empty coffee container next to her console. "Admiral," she said, "the promotion had come through 6 months earlier, and I still had not fully adjusted to the word. The Kessler Void Sector is showing a Level 4 expansion event. It has moved 4 light-years in the last 72 hours. 4 light-years in 72 hours. Our projections had given us 18 months before the shear reached the Vorani outer colonies." "What is the Vorani response?" I said. Grace pulled up the conclave emergency channel. It was flooded, message traffic coming in from 17 different systems at once, overlapping transmissions in 6 languages, the automatic translation system struggling to keep up. I listened to the fragments that came through clearly. 12 Vorani systems, dark, not damaged, dark, completely dark. In the time it took Grace to bring up the star map and mark the affected zones, 3 more systems dropped off the grid. "Admiral," said Ensign Ben Hartley from the communications station, young, barely 22, his voice controlled in the way that very young officers hold themselves controlled when something large is happening. "The conclave is broadcasting an emergency session call. All delegates requested." I stood at the center of the bridge and looked at the star map. 15 systems now, gone, not attacked, not evacuated, gone. I had shown them 47 seconds of footage of a moon disappearing, and they had laughed. I thought about the Teshari elder's voice, slow, certain, ancient, explaining to me that the galaxy was simply breathing. I wondered if he was still breathing. "Open a channel to the conclave emergency session," I said. "I want to listen." The session was chaos. It was the first time I had ever heard the conclave sound afraid. Species that normally communicated in long, formal, carefully structured diplomatic language were transmitting in broken fragments. The Keth ambassador, the same one who had told me our instruments were young, was demanding a military response, but could not explain what kind of military response was appropriate for an enemy that conventional weapons passed through without effect. The Vorani Collective's senior representative was asking, repeatedly, if anyone had records of this kind of event before. Nobody did. I let them talk for 4 minutes. Then I opened a direct transmission to every active channel in the conclave emergency session. "This is Admiral Elias Morn of the United Nations Space Division, commanding the UNT's Reckoning and the First Human War Fleet," I said. "We have been tracking the shear for 14 years. We have developed weapons calibrated to its energy signature. We are already in position at the Kessler Void Sector boundary. We are requesting clearance to engage." The conclave channel went very quiet. Then the Teshari elder's voice came through, slower than I remembered, and carrying something I had not heard in it before. "Admiral Morn, you are already there." "Yes," I said. A pause. "How long have you been there?" 3 days, I said. We anticipated the expansion timeline. Another pause, longer. Clearance granted, the Teshari elder said, and then quieter. We did not know you had vessels of this capability. No, I said, you did not. I closed the channel and turned to Grace. Bring the fleet to full readiness. All resonance arrays online. I want targeting solutions on the shear's leading edge within 10 minutes. Yes, Admiral, Grace was already moving. Nalen Price's voice came through the engineering channel. Reckoning systems are green across the board. Resonance disruptors are warmed and calibrated. You have everything we built, Admiral. I looked at the star map one more time. The shear was visible now even on short-range displays, a dark space where stars should have been, expanding with quiet, terrible patience. The conclave channel was still open. I could hear 47 civilizations waiting. Some of them were the same voices that had laughed 4 years ago in that chamber on Vareth Prime. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt focus. All ships, I said, opening the fleet-wide channel, this is Admiral Morn. We trained for this. We built for this. We have been ready for this since the day the galaxy told us we were wrong to worry. Let us show them what humanity does when nobody is watching. A brief pause across the fleet channel. Then from every ship in the simple way that people respond when they are ready. Ready, Admiral. Engage, I said. The Reckoning's forward arrays fired first. The resonance disruptors produced no visible light. They operated in a frequency range that human eyes could not see. But the effect on the shear was immediate and visible to every sensor on every ship in the fleet. The shear's leading edge shuddered. It contracted by a measurable amount, the first time in recorded history that the shear had moved backward rather than forward. On the conclave channel, someone said something in Teshari that the translator rendered as, "It is working." Yes, I thought it is. We had a long fight ahead. We had not won yet. But in that moment, something shifted, not just in the battle, but in the shape of things. The shear had expanded for years without meeting resistance. It had consumed and erased and moved forward because nothing in its path had ever been built to stop it. We had been built to stop it. Grace's voice came through clearly. Shear is showing structural stress fractures along the leading edge. Resonance disruption is holding. The shear is not advancing. Keep pressure on, I said. Steady and forward, we do not give it room. Outside the bridge windows, the stars were still there, every one of them. We intended to keep it that way. The shear ran. I want to be precise about that because it matters. There was a moment. It came on the 19th day of the engagement, at a point in the Kessler Void sector where the shear's core density was highest and our fleet was fully committed, when the shear stopped expanding. And then, for the first time in any recorded history from any species, it reversed direction and moved away from us. It ran. I was standing at the tactical display when Grace Alderton reported the shift. She said it quietly, the way people say things they want to make sure they have correctly understood before they say them loudly. Admiral, the shear's core signature is retreating. Bearing 274, moving away from the fleet at increasing speed. I looked at the display for 3 full seconds. Follow it, I said. That was how the great hunt began. Not with a dramatic declaration, not with a speech or a ceremony. Just 2 words from a tired admiral standing at a tactical display in the early hours of the morning, looking at a retreating darkness and knowing, with the certainty of someone who has been preparing for exactly this moment for a very long time, that we were not finished. We were going after it. The hunt lasted 6 months and 11 days. I will not pretend it was clean. I will not tell you it felt like victory every day because it did not. I will tell you what it actually was. The most sustained, costly, exhausting, and necessary thing humanity had ever done. Nalen Price ran the engineering teams around the clock. The resonance disruptors required constant recalibration as the shear adapted. Not intelligently, exactly, but instinctively, the way a living thing adapts to pain. Every time we found a frequency that worked, the shear would shift its own energy signature slightly, and Nolan's teams would have to adjust. The work was relentless and precise, and Nolan did it without complaint, sleeping 4 hours at a stretch when he could, eating at his console, his red hair increasingly disheveled and his eyes increasingly focused. He was remarkable. I told him so once. He waved his hand in the dismissive way that people wave when they are embarrassed by sincerity and said, "The math is the interesting part. The shear is actually a fascinating problem." Then he went back to his console. Lieutenant Commander Grace Alderton was my right hand throughout the hunt. She processed sensor data faster than anyone I had worked with, translated complex readings into tactical pictures in real time, and caught 3 navigation errors that would have cost us significant ground. She was also the first person to notice, on day 31, that the shear was not moving randomly. It was moving toward the intergalactic void, the empty space between galaxies where there was nothing to consume and nowhere to go. "It is trying to escape," she said, when she showed me the trajectory analysis. "Then we do not let it reach open void," I said. "If it gets into clear space between galaxies, we lose the density advantage. We need to corner it before then. That means pushing faster than our current pursuit rate. We will be running our drive systems harder than the recommended tolerance." "How much harder?" Grace looked at me evenly. "Nolan says the drives can take it. He says probably." "Probably," I repeated. He also said he would be monitoring every system personally and would tell us immediately if anything was about to fail. I thought about it for exactly 4 seconds. Tell Nolan to push the drives, and tell him I said thank you in advance. Grace almost smiled. "He will hate that." "I know." The drive push worked. We gained 3 light-years on the shear's retreat over the following 10 days, closing the distance between the fleet's forward elements and the shear's core. The Conclave's observer vessels, the ones that had been following the hunt at a cautious distance since the 3rd week, struggled to keep up. They were not built for this pace. Nothing in the galaxy had been built for this pace except us. The observers transmitted regular reports back to the Conclave. I did not read most of them, but Kara Whitfield, who had taken up a coordination role at Earth Command and monitored every incoming channel, forwarded me selected excerpts. The Teshari Elder had reportedly told the Conclave session that watching the human fleet pursue the shear was, in his words, unlike anything in 5,000 years of recorded history. The Vorani Collective had begun formally requesting a military cooperation treaty with humanity. The Keth Dominion had gone very quiet. On day 47, the hunt became personal. We lost the Un's Constancy, one of our escort destroyers, a crew of 212, when the shear produced a counterpulse that none of our sensor readings had predicted. The Constancy was 3 kilometers off the shear's edge, running a targeting calibration when the pulse hit. It was not a weapon in any meaningful sense. The shear did not plan or aim, but the effect was the same as if it had. The Constancy's drive systems failed instantly, and without drives to maintain position, the ship drifted into the shear's edge. It was gone in 8 seconds. I had met Captain Oliver Shaw of the Constancy once, a quiet, methodical man who had been in deep space operations for 14 years and who had told me, when we spoke at the fleet assembly before departure, that he was glad to be part of something that mattered. He had 2 daughters back on Earth. He had shown me a photo. I read every name from the Constancy's crew manifest at a private service on the Reckoning's observation deck that evening. 212 names. It took a long time. Nobody left the deck until I had finished. The next morning I sent a personal message to the family of every crew member we had lost, the Constancy, and the 4 others we had lost earlier in smaller engagements. It took me most of the day. Grace offered to help. I thanked her and did it alone. It was not a task to delegate. On day 91, we crossed into the outer edge of the intergalactic void, the boundary where the galactic structure begins to thin and the distance between stars stretches from light years to hundreds of light years. The shear was ahead of us, moving fast, its energy signature fraying at the edges as it fled. It was weakened. We had been hitting it every day for 3 months, and it was smaller than when we started. It had not consumed anything since the first week of the hunt, because we had not let it reach anything to consume. Young Private Ethan Cole was 20 years old, assigned to the forward gunnery team on the Reckoning's primary array. He had grown up in a small town in the north of England and had joined the Space Division because, he told anyone who asked, he wanted to do something that would still matter in 100 years. On day 91, Ethan Cole's gunnery team landed the first direct resonance hit on the Shear's core, a precision shot that required 17 minutes of targeting calculation and a level of manual accuracy that the system's automated targeting had rated as less than 8% probable. Ethan made it. The Shear's core shuddered visibly on every sensor across the fleet. The energy signature dropped by 30% in 4 seconds. The fleet channel erupted in noise. Grace was grinning, a full, unguarded grin, the first I had seen from her in months. Nolan Price said something over the engineering channel that was technically not appropriate for an official log, and then immediately apologized, and then said it again. I said nothing for a moment. I just looked at the readings. "Good shot, Cole," I said finally on the gunnery channel. "Thank you, Admiral," Ethan Cole said. His voice was shaking just slightly. "Steady," I said. "We are not finished." "No, sir," he said. "I know." That was the shape of the Great Hunt. Not one moment of triumph, but 200 days of moments, of choices, of losses, of precision work done by people who understood what they were doing and why. It was painful and it was costly, and there were nights on the Reckoning's observation deck when I looked at the stars and felt the weight of every name I had read at that service, and I wondered what the right measure of this was, whether we had done right by the people we lost, whether the galaxy we were protecting would ever fully understand what it had cost. I did not have clean answers for those questions. I do not have them now. What I had was the mission and the people around me, and the knowledge that we were the only ones who could do this. And that was enough to keep moving. The Shear did not give up. I want to be honest about that too. On day 144, it surged, a final, full-force expansion that hit the fleet's leading edge hard and cost us 2 more ships and pushed us back 11,000 kilometers before we stabilized. I watched the engagement from the bridge, managing the fleet response with Kara coordinating reinforcement from the rear elements, and I felt something I had not felt since the beginning, the cold edge of doubt. Not fear of losing, doubt about whether we could end this cleanly. Grace read the sensor data during the surge and said, very calmly, "It is a desperation move. The core is at 22% of its original mass. It is not capable of sustained expansion at this level. This is everything it has left." "How long can it maintain this?" I said. "Hours," Grace said. "Not days. If we hold position and keep the resonance arrays active, it will exhaust itself." "Hold position," I told the fleet. "All ships maintain formation. Resonance arrays full output. We are not moving back." We held. 6 hours and 40 minutes later, the Shear's expansion rate dropped to 0. And then it continued to contract. And then it was small enough to target with a full fleet-width resonance discharge, every ship in the hunting formation firing simultaneously at the coordinates Nolan's team calculated in the last hour of the engagement. Nolan ran those calculations himself. He did not sleep while he was running them. I gave the order on day 172 of the Great Hunt. Every ship fired. The Shear's energy signature collapsed in on itself over approximately 90 seconds. Not an explosion, but an implosion, a folding inward, a cessation. The void sensor array went from reading a massive, complex energy field to reading empty space in the space of 1.5 minutes. And then the sensors read nothing. Because there was nothing. Grace Alderton said in a voice that was almost perfectly steady, "Target destroyed. Shear energy signature is gone. All sectors clear." I stood at the tactical display, and I looked at the empty sensor readings for a long time. Nobody said anything. Not on the bridge, not on the Fleet Channel. It was the kind of quiet that happens after something enormous ends. Not relief, exactly, not yet. Just the silence of people who have been running hard for a very long time and have suddenly stopped. Nolan Price's voice came through the engineering channel. "It is done, Admiral," he said. She held together. The reckoning held together. "Tell me the crew losses, total fleet," I said. Kara Whitfield's voice from Earth Command. 489. 489 people who had come out here to hunt something that nobody else believed was worth hunting, and who had not come back. I thought about Oliver Shaw and his 2 daughters. I thought about the 212 names I had read aloud on the observation deck. I thought about the quiet, ordinary courage of people like Ethan Cole and Grace Alderton and Nolan Price, who had done what needed doing without drama or glory. "All ships," I said, "well done, prepare for return transit, we are going home." The Fleet Channel came alive again, not with noise, but with the steady, quiet sounds of people beginning the work of coming home. Outside the observation windows of the reckoning, the stars were there, every one of them. We had kept every one of them. The conclave chamber on Vareth Prime looked different to me when I walked into it the second time. The ceiling was the same. The curved tiers were the same. The pale artificial haze in the upper galleries had not changed. But everything else had changed, and we both knew it. This time, nobody laughed when I walked through the doors. This time, the chamber was completely silent. I walked to the podium, the same podium where I had stood 4 years earlier with my data drives and my 6 months of careful preparation and my request for 12 vessels and an open data agreement. I set down my notes. I looked out at the chamber. Every seat was filled. The Keth Dominion, the Vorani Collective, the Teshari, and 44 other species, all present, all watching. The Teshari elder was in the same position he had been in 4 years ago, long fingers folded, perfectly still, but his expression was different. I had learned enough Teshari body language to know that the position of his upper hands meant something close to respect, or possibly the Teshari equivalent of shame, and I was not sure which, and I did not particularly need to determine it at that moment. The conclave's formal session record showed that 22 of the 47 species present had requested to offer formal statements of apology before I began. I had declined all of them, not from bitterness. I declined because we had work to do, and apologies were not the work. "Honored delegates," I said, and this time the room was so quiet that my voice carried to every tier without amplification. "Humanity accepts the conclave's alliance offers. We accept the trade agreements, the military cooperation frameworks, the shared intelligence protocols, and the joint survey mandates. We will work with every species in this chamber toward a stronger, more secure galaxy." A visible release of tension around the room. The Vorani representative's membrane shifted in a pattern I associated with relief. "Before I sign any of those agreements," I said, "I need this chamber to hear something first." I opened the ledger. Not the physical document I read from memory, because I had read it so many times that every entry was part of me. I read the date of my first presentation. I read the Teshari elder's exact words about the galaxy breathing. I read the Keth ambassador's statement that our instruments were young. I read the Vorani representative's comment about humanity's enthusiasm for galactic safety. I read every formal vote against investigation, every procedural dismissal, every recorded laugh, and the conclave's own records confirmed each one, because I had requested the official transcripts and verified every entry against them. It took 18 minutes. When I finished, the chamber was still silent. I looked at the Teshari elder. He held my gaze. He did not look away. "This record," I said, "is not a document of anger. It is a document of accuracy. Humanity will not pretend this history did not happen. We will not sign agreements that erase it or footnote it or reclassify it as a misunderstanding. It happened. It is recorded. The conclave will acknowledge it formally as part of the official record of this session. That is our first condition. The conclave secretary, a small, three-limbed creature from a species I had never dealt with directly, whose name translated as the voice of record, looked around the chamber and then said, carefully, "Do any delegates object to the formal acknowledgement?" Silence. "The record will reflect the acknowledgement," the secretary said. I moved to the second condition. Humanity will not maintain a unilateral war fleet, I said. The Morn-class vessels will be offered as the core of a joint galactic defense force, commanded jointly, with crews drawn from willing species across the conclave. We are not building an empire. We are offering a partnership. But the partnership must be equal, not managed, not supervised, not condescended to. Equal. The Keth ambassador raised his hand. It was the formal gesture requesting permission to speak. I gave it. "Commander Admiral Morn," he said, and his translator rendered his voice without any of the tonal confidence it had carried 4 years ago. "Humanity has demonstrated a capability that none of us anticipated, a willingness to act, to build, to pursue that we did not account for. I would like to ask, if you had been given the joint investigation you requested 4 years ago, would the outcome have been different?" I looked at him for a moment. "Yes," I said. "We could have engaged the shear earlier when it was smaller and less advanced. We might have lost fewer people. We would certainly have had more time to prepare. A different outcome was possible. The conclave chose not to take it." The Keth ambassador held my gaze and then looked down. It was the first time I had seen a Keth diplomat break eye contact in a formal session. I had been told by people who studied Keth culture that it was the equivalent of a bow. "We accept your conditions," the Teshari elder said from the upper tier. His voice was slower than usual and carried something heavy. "All of them. We accept the acknowledgement of record. We accept the equal partnership framework. We accept that we made an error that cost lives, including your own people's lives, and that this is not a small thing." "No," I said, "it is not." I signed the first agreement at 1400 hours station time. The Vorani representative was the first to approach and countersign. She did it quickly, with her membrane pulsing in a light pattern that, according to my cultural briefing materials, indicated sincerity. The Keth ambassador countersigned without speaking. The Teshari elder descended from the upper tier, something I was told he had not done in 30 years of conclave sessions, and signed with his own name pressed into the record rather than through a proxy, which was apparently significant. I did not feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that. I felt tired mostly. Tired in the specific way of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has only just been able to set it down. I felt the absence of 489 people. I felt the weight of the ledger, not the document, but the real thing, the 18 minutes of accumulated dismissals that I had spent 4 years carrying around. But I also felt something else, something quieter and more durable. I went back to Earth a week later, not to the Nevada facility or the Martian yards or any official location. I went home, a small place in the north of England, not far from where my family had lived for 3 generations, where the hills were green and the sky was frequently gray and everything moved at the pace of things that were not trying to save anything. I stood at the memorial that had been built on the edge of the town's main park, a simple structure, locally made, with 489 names engraved into its surface. The names were not in rank order or alphabetical order. They were in the order that I had read them on the observation deck of the Reckoning, which was the order they appeared in the crew manifest. The Constancy's crew first, then the 4 other ships, then the individuals lost in smaller engagements. Oliver Shaw was near the top. I stood there for a long time. The grass was wet from recent rain. A dog was barking somewhere in the middle distance. Ordinary, quiet, unremarkable things. A girl, she was maybe 8 or 9 years old, bundled in a bright orange coat, her hair in 2 braids, stopped near the memorial and looked at it with the focused attention children bring to things they are trying to understand. Then she looked up at me. Did you know them? She asked. Some of them, I said. What happened to them? They went a very long way from home, I said, and they did something very important and they did not come back. She looked at the names again. What was the important thing? I thought about how to answer. I thought about 14 years of sensor data and 47 seconds of footage of a disappearing moon. I thought about the conclave chamber and the laughter and the long corridor outside where I had made the call to begin Protocol Ember. I thought about the Martian shipyards in their amber domes, and Nolan Price explaining resonance disruptors, and Grace Alderton reading sensor data in the small hours of the morning, and Ethan Cole's shaking voice saying, "Thank you, Admiral." I thought about the Teshari elder descending from his tier for the first time in 30 years. I thought about 489 names on a cold stone surface in the English rain. They kept the stars where they belong, I said. The girl looked up at the sky, pale gray, overcast, the kind of sky that does not show stars. But she looked anyway, the way children look at things they are trying to see. That sounds important, she said. It was, I said. She nodded, very seriously, the way children nod when they have decided something. Then she ran back toward whoever was waiting for her on the other side of the park. I stayed a little longer. I read all 489 names one more time, quietly to myself. Then I went home. The galaxy is still out there, larger, stranger, more complicated than any one species can fully map or fully understand. 47 civilizations are learning, slowly, what it means to treat humanity as a partner rather than a curiosity. The Joint Defense Force is being built. The first classes of non-human crew are training alongside human officers. It is not easy, and it is not perfect, and there are days when I receive transmissions from Varath Prime that make me want to read the ledger again, just to remember why patience matters. But the stars are where they belong. Every one of them. And that is what we asked for in the end, not power, not recognition, not the galaxy bowing its head. We asked to be heard when we said something mattered. We earned that. It cost more than it should have. And we will not forget.